They told me my compassion would get me fired, but it was the very thing that handed me the keys to the executive floor. My name is Lena, and for the first 6 months after graduating, I was a professional ghost. I haunted the halls of Apex Dynamics, a global consulting firm whose name was synonymous with power and prestige. On paper, I was a business analyst intern. In reality, I was a sentient printer, a coffee courier, a human footnote in the grand, glossy narrative of corporate success. The unspoken rule for someone in my position was simple, repeated like a mantra by my peers. Stay invisible. Do your work. Don't cause problems. Don't get noticed. I had become an expert at it. I was 23, and the vibrant, outspoken girl I'd been in high school had been sanded down by the relentless grind of college rejections, failed relationships, and a series of internships that taught me my ideas were less valuable than my obedience. I navigated the sprawling Apex headquarters with my shoulders perpetually curled, my eyes fixed on the polished concrete floors. I took the stairs to avoid the silent, awkward elevator rides with VPs. I ate my lunch at my desk, scrolling through social media feeds of friends who seemed to be living lives of dazzling purpose. I was a silhouette, fading into the background of a much brighter picture. The one place I didn't feel like a ghost was with my sister, Chloe. She was 10 years younger, born with a profound hearing impairment, and she possessed a fiery, hilarious spirit that could light up a room. Our parents loved her deeply, but they often treated her deafness as a tragedy, a problem to be solved with expensive hearing aids and speech therapy. I saw it differently. I saw her world, and I wanted to be a part of it. So I dedicated myself to learning American Sign Language. It became my secret passion, my midnight study session after my real homework was done. I practiced fingerspelling until my hands cramped, attended silent socials at the local deaf community center, and wore out the replay button on countless online ASL tutorials. By the time I started at Apex, I was fluent. It was my hidden superpower, a source of quiet pride in a life that otherwise felt utterly unremarkable. The Apex office was a temple of glass and steel, a monument to ambition. Sunlight poured through the 3-story atrium, glinting off monitors and the determined eyes of consultants who moved with a velocity that felt both impressive and terrifying. The main lobby was a perpetual motion machine of tailored suits, sharp briefcases, and the low, urgent hum of deals being made. And I was just Lena, the intern whose primary function was to support a senior manager named David, a man so perpetually busy, he often referred to me as you because he couldn't be bothered to recall my name. That Tuesday in November began like any other. A major client presentation was looming, and the air was thick with a palpable tension. My phone vibrated incessantly with demands from David. I was stationed near the main entrance, organizing a mountain of client welcome kits, trying to look busy and essential. And that's when I saw him. An older gentleman, maybe in his late 70s, with a head of distinguished white hair and a tweed jacket that seemed out of place among the sea of sharp suits. He was standing slightly apart from the main current of traffic, his eyes darting between the reception desk and the crowd, a look of profound confusion etched on his face. The receptionist, a perpetually flustered young woman named Bethany, was juggling 3 phone lines and a delivery guy. She shot the man a harried glance and gave a dismissive wave, turning her back to him to deal with what she clearly deemed a more pressing issue. I felt a familiar knot tighten in my stomach. My mandate was clear. Focus on the kits. Do not deviate. Do not engage. But something about the defeated slope of his shoulders, the way he seemed to shrink into himself, hooked a part of my soul I thought I'd buried. He was adrift in a sea of people too busy to throw him a lifeline. Then I saw it, a slight, almost imperceptible movement of his hands. His fingers, trembling slightly, formed a shape, then another. He wasn't just confused, he was trying to communicate in a language no one around him could comprehend. He was signing. My breath caught in my throat. In that instant, he wasn't a stranger in a lobby. He was my sister, Chloe, lost in a crowded mall, her eyes wide with panic as people brushed past her, unaware of her silent calls for help. My heart began to hammer against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the steady, indifferent hum of the office. David's voice echoed in my head, "Lena, those kits are priority one. Do not get distracted." But my feet were already moving before my brain could veto them. I set down the heavy box of kits and walked towards him, my palms slick with sweat. When his eyes met mine, they held a deep, weary sadness I recognized all too well. I took a steadying breath and raised my hands. "Hello," I signed, my movements slow and deliberate. "My name is Lena. Do you need some help?" The transformation was immediate and breathtaking. It was like watching the sun break through a weeks-long storm. The tension drained from his face, replaced by a wave of pure, unadulterated relief. His eyes welled up and a genuine smile touched his lips. "You know ASL?" He signed back, his own gestures fluid and graceful. "Thank God, I thought I would be stuck here forever. No one understands." "I understand," I signed. "What can I do for you?" "I'm here to see my son," he explained. "It's somewhat of a surprise. I don't have an appointment scheduled." There was a weight to his signs, a hesitation that suggested this was more than a casual pop-in. "What is your son's name?" I asked. "James," he signed. "James Holloway." The name landed in the center of my chest with the force of a physical blow. James Holloway, the founder and CEO of Apex Dynamics. His name was engraved on a massive bronze plaque in the center of the lobby, a deity whose presence was felt in every corner of the building, but who was rarely seen in person. "You are Mr. Holloway's father?" I signed, careful to keep my expression neutral. He gave a single, solemn nod. "I know he's a very important man. I know he's busy. But I needed to see him today." His eyes flickered with a complex mix of paternal pride and a deep, lingering hurt. I guided him to a sleek, modern seating area in the lobby. "Please, have a seat. I will call his office and let him know you're here." My hands trembled as I dialed the extension for Sarah, the CEO's executive assistant. Her voice was a model of crisp efficiency. "Mr. Holloway's office, this is Sarah." "Hi, Sarah. This is Lena Petrova from the intern program. There's a gentleman here in the lobby who says he's Mr. Holloway's father." There was a pause on the line, longer than I expected, then a cautious, "His father?" "Yes, ma'am. An older gentleman, very kind. He's been waiting for a little while." Another stretch of silence, then a clipped, "Have him wait there. I will inform Mr. Holloway." I hung up and walked back to him, forcing a reassuring smile. "They're checking with him now. It might be a few minutes." "Thank you, Lena," he signed. "My name is Arthur." The minutes stretched. 10, then 15. Arthur didn't seem bothered by the wait. Instead, he began to tell me about his life. His hands painted pictures of a long career as a history professor, of a wife, Eleanor, who had been a passionate advocate for deaf education before she passed away, of the quiet pride and unspoken distance that had grown between him and his hearing son over the years. I listened, captivated, translating for a few curious employees who drifted by, my hands moving almost on autopilot. All the while, my phone continued to buzz in my pocket. David's texts lit up the screen. "Lena, status on the kits. The clients are arriving early. Where are you? Report to the conference room now." Every vibration was a jab of anxiety, but I found myself ignoring them. The human connection I was forging with Arthur felt more real, more important than any presentation folder. What I couldn't have known was that our entire interaction was being observed from a different vantage point. From the second-floor balcony, partially obscured by a large sculptural plant, James Holloway himself was standing, watching. He was watching his father talk animatedly with a young intern. He was watching me ignore my buzzing phone. He was watching the one thing I had tried so hard to avoid: attention. And in that moment, the carefully constructed fortress of my invisibility began to crumble. The longer I sat with Arthur, the more the frantic pace of Apex faded into a distant background murmur. To fill the time, I gave him an impromptu tour of the ground floor. I showed him the Wall of Fame with Apex's biggest successful campaigns, the sleek product demo area, even the bustling cafe where the baristas knew everyone's complicated orders by heart. He was fascinated by everything, his eyes alight with a childlike wonder. And though I knew I was shredding the intern handbook into confetti, I couldn't bring myself to stop. This felt right. My phone buzzed again, this time with a final, ominous text from David. "This is a fireable offense, Lena. I'm coming to find you." The bubble of peace popped. When we circled back to the lobby seating area, Arthur signed, "Thank you, Lena. You have made me feel welcome here. You have made me feel visible." Those words were still hanging in the air between us when I saw David striding toward us. His face was a mask of cold fury, his steps sharp and precise on the hard floor. "Lena," he snapped, his voice cutting through the ambient noise like a whip. "What do you think you are doing? You have been missing for nearly an hour. Do you have any idea the chaos you have caused?" My throat closed. Arthur looked between us, his smile vanishing, replaced by confusion and concern. I started to raise my hands to sign an explanation to him, but David stepped closer, invading my personal space, his voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "You are an intern. Your job is to assist, not to socialize. When I report this, don't expect a reference. You're finished here." The words were meant to shatter me, and a part of me did break, but not the part he expected. As I looked at Arthur's worried face, all I felt was a fierce, burning certainty that I had done the right thing. The shame didn't consume me. Before I could even form a response, a calm, authoritative voice cut through the tension. "David, I believe Miss Petrova is with me." Everything stopped. My head swiveled toward the voice. There he was, James Holloway. He stood not 10 feet away, his gaze fixed on me, his expression unreadable. David froze, his hand, which had been gesturing angrily, dropping to his side. "Mr. Holloway, she was neglecting her duties. She was assisting my father," James Holloway said, his tone even but leaving no room for argument. A soft collective gasp seemed to ripple through the lobby. All movement ceased, all conversations died. David's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. I stood rooted to the spot, my mind reeling, unsure if I was being saved or set up for an even more spectacular fall. James Holloway crossed the floor, his focus shifting from David to Arthur. He didn't look at the CEO he was in that moment, he looked at the son he had been for decades. He crouched slightly, bringing himself to his father's eye level. Then, to my absolute astonishment, he raised his hands. They were clumsy, unpracticed, but his intent was unmistakable. He was signing. "Dad, I am sorry I made you wait." Arthur's lips parted in sheer disbelief, his own hands lifted, trembling with emotion. You've been learning." James nodded, a flicker of shame crossing his features. "I started a few months ago. I should have done it years ago. I didn't know you were here until I saw you with Lena." He glanced at me, then back at his father. "I haven't seen you look that happy in a long time." The scene was almost too intimate to witness. The most powerful man in the building, reduced to a fumbling student, his corporate armor completely gone. Arthur's shoulders began to shake as he signed back. "I thought you were ashamed of me. I thought you had forgotten how to talk to me." "Never," James said, his voice thick with emotion, his signs becoming more deliberate. "I was the one who was ashamed. Ashamed that I let so much time pass. I thought building this," he gestured vaguely at the building around us, "was the most important thing. I was wrong." Tears welled in my eyes. Around us, the entire lobby was holding its breath, witnessing a family's fractured history begin to mend in real time. Arthur reached out and placed a hand on his son's arm. a gesture of such profound forgiveness that it silenced the last of the office whispers. Then, in front of everyone, father and son embraced. It was a brief, powerful hug that seemed to rewrite a decade of silence. When they separated, James Holloway turned his attention to me. "Miss Petrova, would you please join us upstairs in my office?" His tone was not a request, but his eyes held a softness, a gratitude that made it feel like an invitation. David tried one last time to interject. "Sir, with all due respect, the client presentation—" "That's enough, David," James said, his voice regaining its CEO edge. "We will discuss your priorities later." The elevator ride to the top floor was surreal. I stood in silence beside Arthur, who gave my hand a grateful squeeze, while James Holloway stared straight ahead, his jaw set. When the doors slid open, his office unfolded before us. It was everything a corner office should be. Floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city, rich mahogany bookshelves, modern art on the walls. But it felt more like a museum exhibit than a living, breathing workspace. "Please sit," he said, gesturing to a plush seating area, bypassing his massive desk entirely. He sat beside his father, creating a circle of three. I perched on the edge of an armchair, my heart still racing. "Mr. Holloway, I want to apologize. I know I disregarded my direct tasks, and I—" He held up a hand. "Stop. You did what every person in this company should do, but few ever do. You saw a human being in need, and you acted. You made my father feel valued, something I have failed at for years." His eyes shifted to Arthur, filled with a pain I could only begin to imagine. "He says you remind me of my mother, that you have her gift for making people feel seen." I bit my lip, overwhelmed. "I just did what I would hope someone would do for my little sister, Chloe. She's deaf. I know the loneliness she feels when the world looks right through her." James Holloway leaned forward, his gaze intense, as if he were seeing me for the first time. "That's precisely why I asked you to come up here. What you did today was a mirror held up to this entire organization. It showed me what's fundamentally missing." I blinked. "Missing?" "We have diversity statements. We have inclusion initiatives on paper. We talk about values in board meetings, but we don't live them. Today, a 23-year-old intern demonstrated more authentic leadership and integrity than my entire senior management team has shown me in the last quarter." I was speechless. My mind screamed that he was being hyperbolic, that this was just a moment of emotional high that would fade. But the conviction in his eyes was absolute. "I want to change that, Lena. And I want you to help me." The room seemed to tilt on its axis. "Me?" "I am creating a new executive position, Head of Cultural Integrity and Accessibility. You will be responsible for auditing our entire operation, from our physical spaces to our hiring practices to our client relations. You will design and implement training. You will ensure that Apex doesn't just preach empathy, but embodies it. You will report directly to me." My pulse was a roar in my ears. "Mr. Holloway, I'm an intern. I have no credentials for this. I don't have the experience." He held up a hand. "You have the only credential that matters. You have a moral compass. You saw someone in need, and you prioritized humanity over procedure. That is the core of leadership. Everything else can be taught." Arthur squeezed my hand again, nodding vigorously, his eyes pleading with me to accept this impossible offer. I sat back, dizzy. An hour ago, I was facing termination. Now the CEO was offering me a seat at the leadership table. I need some time to process this," I managed to whisper.
"Take the weekend," James said, a faint smile touching his lips. "But know this. This company needs your heart. I need your perspective." The rest of the meeting was a blur of numbers, titles, and responsibilities that I barely processed. When I finally stood to leave, Arthur pulled me into a tight, emotional hug. "You gave me back my son," he signed, tears streaming freely down his face. "And you gave him a gift he didn't even know he was searching for." The elevator doors closed on James Holloway watching us, his expression softer and more at peace than I could have ever imagined. That evening, I video called Chloe. When I signed the news to her, her face exploded in joy. "You're going to make the whole company better for people like me?" she signed, bouncing on her bed. "Lena, you're a superhero." For the first time in years, I felt like one. By Monday morning, my decision was made. I walked into James Holloway's office, my hands steady and my voice clear. "Yes," I said, "I accept the position." That was the true beginning. The title was impressive, but the work was gritty, granular, and often frustrating. My first order of business was a comprehensive audit. What I discovered was a landscape of well-intentioned neglect, emergency systems that were purely auditory, a website that was a nightmare for screen readers, marketing videos without captions, a culture that praised grit but punished vulnerability. I started from the ground up. We retrofitted the entire building with visual fire alarms and notification systems. We mandated closed captioning for all internal and external video content. We hired full-time ASL interpreters for company-wide meetings and offered to cover the cost for any team meetings that required them. We launched voluntary ASL for Allies workshops that, to my shock, had a waiting list within days. The most profound transformation, however, was in David. The supervisor who had threatened to fire me became one of my most dedicated allies. After attending one of my foundational workshops on inclusive communication, he asked to speak with me privately. "I was so obsessed with the optics of that presentation," he admitted, his voice heavy with regret. "I was so focused on the perfect execution of a task that I forgot about the people performing them. I don't want to lead like that anymore. Will you help me?" 6 months later, Apex Dynamics was recognized with the prestigious industry award for its groundbreaking work in workplace inclusion and accessibility. James Holloway held the Crystal Trophy, but he insisted I be the one to step onto the stage and accept it. My voice wavered only for a second before finding its strength. "True inclusion isn't a line in an employee handbook," I said, my gaze sweeping over the crowd. "It's a choice you make in a crowded lobby. It's the decision to see the person everyone else has chosen to overlook. That single choice is what has the power to change everything." In the front row, Arthur was beaming, his hands moving in silent, proud applause. Next to him, James Holloway looked not like a powerful CEO, but like a son who had finally found his way home. And I, Lena, the girl who had mastered invisibility, finally felt truly, completely seen. I had learned that success isn't about the title on your door or the size of your office. It's about the courage to connect, the strength and empathy, and the willingness to see and be seen for who you truly are. If this story resonated with you, I'd be honored to hear about your own experiences in the comments. What small act of courage has changed your path? And if you want to be notified when I share the next chapter of this journey, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications.